The Skin I Lived In. A prestigious plastic surgeon, Robert Ledgard, loses his wife after an accident in which her body is severely burned. From that tragedy, he develops a fire-resistant synthetic skin, a revolutionary medical breakthrough that hides a much darker purpose. The story begins in an isolated clinic where Vera lives, spending her days doing yoga and making sculptures, constantly monitored by cameras. After a suicide attempt, Robert treats her, and it is revealed that her skin is his creation. Although he claims to be protecting her, his obsession with her is evident. One day, a man breaks into the clinic, mistakes Vera for Robert's deceased wife, and assaults her. Robert witnesses everything through the cameras and kills him. This event uncovers the past. Robert's wife died burned, and his daughter Norma, deeply traumatized, eventually took her own life. The film jumps back several years to show the origin of everything. Norma was sexually assaulted at a party by a man named Vincent. After finding her unconscious and later witnessing her psychological deterioration and suicide, Robert decides to take revenge. He kidnaps Vincent, keeps him locked up in his clinic, and subjects him to a forced transformation. He turns him into a woman, implants the synthetic skin, and forces him to adopt a new female identity. Vincent ceases to exist. Now she is called Vera. The transformation, beyond being a punishment, is also Robert's sick attempt to recreate his lost wife. Over the years, Vera appears to adapt. She gains Robert's trust, leaves her room, and claims to love him. She even defends him when another doctor tries to expose him, insisting that she was never kidnapped and that she has always been a woman. But it is all a facade. In the finale, Vera takes advantage of a moment of carelessness, grabs a weapon, and kills Robert, finally managing to escape the clinic. After eliminating the last obstacle standing in her way, she leaves the place after years of captivity. The final scene shows Vera returning to her mother's shop. Through tears, she whispers the truth to her. "I'm Vincent." The film ends by making it clear that, despite the physical transformation and the torture, Vincent's identity was never destroyed, and that the entire story was a spiral of revenge. Apelay is a deeply controversial video game that could only have been conceived by the mind of a disturbed Japanese creator. In it, the player assumes the role of a character who stalks and commits violent acts, including sexual assaults, against women. The story centers on a protagonist seeking revenge against a girl and her family after an incident on a subway. The content is explicit, depicting scenes of harassment and abuse, which makes the game's themes profoundly disturbing. While Japanese media has a history of exploring provocative concepts, Apelay sparked widespread outrage for its focus on abusing women. Critics slammed it for promoting such acts. Originally released only in Japan, the game spread internationally via the internet, catching the attention of media, governments, and activists. As its infamy grew, efforts intensified to suppress its distribution. In the story, the player targets 3 women: a 17-year-old, her 12-year-old sister, and their mother. After the older girl catches the protagonist in the act on a subway, he's arrested but quickly freed due to his influential father. Seeking revenge, he begins with the younger sister, luring her into a trap, assaulting her, and taking compromising photos. The next day, he targets the mother, ambushing and assaulting her in a park, then handing her to his accomplices. Finally, he confronts the older girl, showing her a photo of her bound mother and assaulting her in a hotel. With all 3 captured, he reveals his plan to enslave them. The mother tries to protect her girls by complying with his demands, but he betrays her. The story ends darkly, with their suffering just beginning. The game has 2 endings, both fatal for the protagonist. In one, he impregnates one of the women and later dies in a train accident. In the other, the older girl, driven to madness, stabs him to death, leading to her interrogation by police. The game's explicit content and themes have made it a lightning rod for criticism, raising serious ethical questions about its existence. The Mist is remembered as one of the most tragic plot twists in film history, and for good reason, as it radically changed the ending Stephen King had written for his original work. David, the protagonist, is trapped in a supermarket with his son Billy when the mist rolls in. He barricades himself inside with several survivors, doing their best to endure the deadly conditions outside. When a group of fanatics begins acting dangerously, David and a small group escape in a vehicle, hoping to find safety. After driving for several kilometers, they run out of gas and end up stranded on a road. Not long after discovering his wife's murdered body at home, David decides to spare the group from a slow and painful death at the hands of the creatures. His plan leaves him alive to face that fate alone. The silence and the careful gestures to avoid waking Billy shatter the heart. David pulls the trigger 4 times, killing everyone else, and is left to suffer whatever comes next. But as he steps out of the car, ready to face the creatures, the mist begins to clear, revealing military vehicles full of survivors, including a woman who had left earlier to search for her children, the same woman no one had been willing to help back in the supermarket. Humanity has endured, civilization has prevailed, but David has lost everything. What had seemed like a moment of grim courage now becomes meaningless. Hope, so often the elixir of fantasy tales, is here reduced to the thin line that had separated 4 people from life. The ending that already felt dark takes things further, delivering a terrifying reminder that even when everything seems lost, it's hope that keeps us alive. Shutter Island. In 1954, 2 U.S. Marshals are sent to a remote island in Boston Harbor to investigate the disappearance of a dangerous criminal confined in a psychiatric hospital. Federal agents Edward "Teddy" Daniels and his partner Chuck arrive at Ashcliff Hospital to investigate the case of Rachel Solando, a patient who seemingly vanished from a locked room. From the very beginning, the place feels secretive. Their weapons are taken away, the doctors refuse to hand over files, and everything seems designed to hide something. During the investigation, Teddy becomes obsessed with a lighthouse and with the idea that inhumane experiments are being carried out on the island's patients. One patient even slips him a note telling him to flee the island. Added to this are Teddy's dreams and hallucinations, in which his wife Dolores appears. She died in a fire set by Andrew Latus, the man Teddy claims he came to the hospital to find. The storm, his migraines, the medications, and the testimony of a patient all reinforce the idea of a conspiracy. The search leads them to Ward C, where the most dangerous patients are held. Chuck disappears, Teddy believes he sees him dead on the rocks, and then he meets a woman hiding in a cave who claims to be the real Rachel. She says the hospital is experimenting with hallucinogenic substances and mind control, and that she was committed as a patient for discovering the truth. Finally, Teddy reaches the lighthouse, convinced that lobotomies are performed there. Inside, Dr. Cawley reveals the truth. Teddy Daniels does not exist. He is Andrew Latus, patient 67 at Ashcliff. His wife, a manic depressive, drowned their children, and Andrew killed her. Unable to live with the guilt, he created a new identity. Edward Daniels and Rachel Solando are anagrams of Andrew Latus and Dolores. Chuck is actually his psychiatrist, and the entire investigation was an elaborate role play meant to cure him. Andrew remembers everything and seems to accept reality, and the doctors believe they have succeeded, until days later when he once again calls his psychiatrist, Chuck, with a deeply unsettling final line: which would be worse, to live as a monster or to die as a good man? It becomes clear that his relapse is intentional. He chooses to be lobotomized rather than live with the guilt. Time Enough at Last is one of the most iconic episodes of The Twilight Zone, largely because of its tragic and devastating ending. The story follows Henry Bemis, a timid, fragile man completely obsessed with books. He lives in a world that despises his passion for reading. His boss threatens to fire him for reading on the job, and his own wife mocks and humiliates him, going so far as to destroy his books and black out the pages of the few he has left. Trapped in a dull, joyless routine, Henry finds his only comfort in the quiet moments he spends with his books. One day, during his lunch break, he locks himself in the bank vault to read in peace, and that's when it happens. An atomic bomb drops. When Henry emerges, he finds that everything has been reduced to rubble. The city is gone, a silent, lifeless wasteland. As he wanders through the ruins, he slowly realizes he's the only one left alive. The loneliness is crushing, and at one point he even considers taking his own life. But then he finds it. The remains of the public library, miraculously intact. Hundreds of books, years of reading, and no one to stop him. For the first time in his life, Henry has exactly what he always dreamed of: unlimited time to read. He starts organizing the books by months, by years. He smiles. He sits down. He picks up the first book. And his glasses fall. They hit the concrete and shatter. The image is heartbreaking. Henry surrounded by books, kneeling helplessly, now blind. And then he speaks the line that became legendary.
There was time now. There was all the time I needed.
But it's too late. In a show known for poetic justice and moral endings, this episode stands out for something even crueler. It denies redemption to the most innocent character. Henley didn't hurt anyone. He just wanted to read. The Last of Us has an ending so dark that despite everything, many would have done exactly what Joel did. The game drops us into a post-apocalyptic world devastated by a fungal infection that turns humans into grotesque, violent creatures. Society has collapsed, and what little remains is held together by force under an authoritarian military regime, while other factions survive by murdering innocents, women and children included, to steal the bare minimum they need. In the middle of that hell, we follow Joel, a bitter, broken man, emotionally hollow since the death of his daughter. Although we control him for most of the game, it's clear he is a character defined by loss and guilt. Joel is tasked with escorting Ellie, a teenage girl, across a ruined America. At first, their relationship is cold, almost mechanical, but the journey forces them to depend on each other. Ellie loses friends, faces unthinkable horrors, and even survives an encounter with a man who turns out to be a pedo and a cannibal. Despite everything, a deep, almost paternal bond forms between her and Joel. For Joel, Ellie becomes a second chance, a twisted way to recover the daughter he lost. The big problem is that Ellie is immune. She was bitten but never turned. That makes her the possible cure for humanity. After crossing the entire country, they finally reach a laboratory where the doctors revealed the truth. To extract the cure, Ellie must die. And that's where everything starts to turn dark. Joel refuses to accept the sacrifice. He cannot lose a daughter again, even if this time she isn't really his. In a deeply human and brutally selfish act, he sends all of humanity to hell. He kills the only doctors capable of developing the cure, murders the group's leader, and rescues Ellie while she's under anesthesia, even knowing that she was willing to accept her fate. The game ends with a lie. Ellie, confused and sensing that something doesn't add up, asks Joel what happened at the hospital. He tells her there were many other immune children, and that they decided to try the cure on someone else. She believes him, or chooses to believe him. Camp Lazlo ended in a very strange, anticlimactic, and honestly pretty dark way if you really think about it. For a bit of context, the series followed Lazlo, a hyperactive and optimistic monkey, along with his friends Raj, an Indian elephant with anxiety issues, and Clam, a silent and bizarre rhino, as they lived through all kinds of absurd situations at a summer camp. Each episode revolved around everyday camp activities taken to the extreme through exaggerated characters, ridiculous dialogue, and very physical, chaotic humor. Everything was wrapped in an innocent, almost childlike vibe, where problems were never truly serious and the main goal was simply to have fun. But then something unbearable happened, and it turned into the most abrupt and bizarre ending ever seen on Cartoon Network. It turns out that the Scoutmaster, Lumpus, comes up with the idea of stopping spending money on clothes and instead painting everything directly onto people's bodies. Yes, he wanted everyone to walk around naked. Pretty weird, especially when you consider that almost everyone there was a kid. But things get even creepier when the police show up and take Lumpus away, because it turns out he was an imposter. With the appearance of the real Lumpus, we realize that the guy had been faking an entire life throughout the whole summer, doing shady things with all the campers around him, as disturbing as it gets. The ending might have been somewhat acceptable if the series had shown hints of this, if it had been playing with mystery, but no, nothing like that ever happened. Out of nowhere, we just find out that Lumpus was a lunatic who had spent all this time pretending to be someone else, putting the lives of all the kids at the camp in danger. RiME is one of those games where the final message is deeply heartbreaking and will leave a permanent mark after finishing its story. The game begins with a boy who wakes up on a mysterious island after a storm. We don't know his name, and we don't know how he got there. We only know that he's alone and that in the distance there is a huge tower that seems to be calling him. The world is beautiful but lonely. The boy explores ancient ruins, solves puzzles, and encounters mysterious figures, a red fox that guides him and a hooded figure that appears and disappears. Everything is loaded with symbolism. There are fragments of memories, statues of people frozen in time, and glimpses of a blurry past. And the further he goes, the darker the environment becomes. The boy's journey is a mix of exploration and mourning. It feels like he's going through the stages of grief until he reaches the final zone, acceptance. After passing through all the emotional stages, denial, anger, fear, and sadness, the boy finally reaches the heart of the tower. There, he faces a much larger and darker version of himself, and finally lets it go. In the last playable scene, the boy sits on the ground, calm. The sun disappears, light envelops him, and everything falls silent. And then the game pulls us out of the fantasy world, and that's when we understand everything. RiME is the story of a father going through grief over the death of his son. The island, the puzzles, the figures, all of it is a mental construction, a way of processing the loss. The boy is a memory. The fox is an emotional guide. The tower is the acceptance of death. And the player wasn't controlling the boy. They were controlling the father's pain. It's in the final scene that the father opens his arms and lets go of his son's red garment through the window, releasing it into the wind. He finally accepts that his son is gone, and the game ends in silence. This game doesn't throw the tragedy at you as a surprise twist, but as an emotional puzzle you've been piecing together without realizing it. And when the last piece clicks into place, the game reveals itself as an intimate journey through the most brutal grief a person can live, the loss of a child.